The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony like it had for the past 15 years. Jake Morrison stood at his office window, watching children walk to school along the clean streets below. The sight made him smile. This was what they had built. Here, a safe place for families to grow. Jake had been the colony administrator since the beginning. He remembered when New Haven was just empty land and big dreams. Now it was home to 50,000 people. They had schools, hospitals, parks, and everything a community needed. His wife Linda ran the education center in the heart of town. Every morning, she welcomed over 2,000 children through the doors. The kids came from all over the colony. Some lived in the farming district where their parents grew food. Others came from the mining areas where families worked the mineral deposits. 8-year-old Ben Patterson was one of Linda's favorite students. He had bright eyes and always asked questions about everything. His little sister Amy was 6 and loved to draw pictures of the purple flowers that grew wild around the colony. Their parents worked at the water treatment plant that kept the colony's rivers clean. The Patterson family was like most families on New Haven. They had come here looking for a better life. Earth was getting crowded, and the colonies offered space and opportunity. People could build something new among the stars. Ben and Amy walked to school together every day. They passed the market where Tony Rodriguez fixed broken machines. Tony had 2 kids of his own, a boy named Carlos and a girl named Rosa. Carlos was Ben's best friend, and they often played together after school. Dr. Kate Sullivan worked at the colony hospital. She had moved to New Haven 5 years ago with her daughter Emma. Kate liked the peaceful life here. On Earth, she had worked in busy city hospitals where people were always stressed and afraid. Here, the biggest medical emergency was usually a broken arm from playing too hard. The colony had no military. They didn't need one. New Haven was far from the trade routes, where pirates sometimes caused trouble. The nearest alien worlds were friendly. The blue-skinned Altarians sometimes visited to trade their beautiful crystals for human-made tools. Jake finished his morning coffee and walked to his office. His assistant, a young woman named Beth, was already sorting through the day's reports. The farming district needed new irrigation pipes. The school wanted funding for a new playground. The mining teams had found a new deposit of rare metals. These were good problems to have. Jake signed the papers and approved the requests. Life was peaceful on New Haven. At the school, Linda Morrison gathered the children for morning assembly. She loved seeing their happy faces as they sang songs and shared stories. Ben Patterson raised his hand to tell everyone about the baby bird he had found in his backyard. Amy showed off her latest drawing of their house with the purple flowers. The day felt like any other day. Parents went to work while their children learned and played. The colony hummed with quiet activity. Farmers tended their crops. Miners dug for valuable metals. Shopkeepers sold goods to their neighbors. Nobody noticed the shadows that fell across the sky at noon. The first sign of trouble came from the communication center. A technician named Gary was monitoring the usual radio chatter when his equipment started picking up strange signals. The signals were coming from space, but they weren't from any human ship. Gary called Jake Morrison right away. Jake hurried to the communication center and listened to the alien signals. The sounds were harsh and clicking, like metal scraping against stone. Jake had heard many alien languages during his years as administrator, but this was different. These sounds were cold and threatening. The signals got stronger. Gary's equipment showed that something big was coming toward New Haven. Something very big. Jake ordered Gary to try making contact. Gary sent out standard greeting messages in several alien languages. He asked who they were and what they wanted. The only response was more of the harsh clicking sounds. Then the ships appeared. They came out of the empty space, between stars like dark clouds blocking the sun. There were dozens of them, each one bigger than any ship the humans had ever built. The ships were black and covered with sharp spikes. They looked like weapons designed to cause fear. The largest ship was 3 times bigger than the rest. It hung in the sky above the colony like a metal mountain. Strange lights flickered along its surface. The other ships spread out in a pattern. That surrounded New Haven completely. Jake's hands shook as he activated the colony's emergency alert system. Warning sirens began to wail across New Haven. People stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Children pointed at the strange ships and asked their teachers what was happening. At the school, Linda Morrison tried to keep the children calm. She had trained for emergencies, but nothing like this. The children could sense her fear, even though she tried to hide it. Ben Patterson held his sister Amy's hand tight. Carlos Rodriguez looked around for his father Tony. The alien ships just hung there in the sky, waiting. The silence was worse than any sound they could have made. Jake tried again and again to make contact, but the aliens wouldn't answer. Then, finally, they spoke. The voice came through every speaker in the colony. It was deep and cold, speaking human words with an accent that made them sound like threats. The alien spoke slowly, as if humans were too stupid to understand quickly. "I am Warlord Zektar of the Vorthic Empire," the voice said. "You will surrender your colony to me immediately. Your resistance is useless. Your weapons are weak. Your people are soft." Jake grabbed the microphone and spoke back. "This is Administrator Jake Morrison of New Haven Colony. We are peaceful people. We have no quarrel with you. What do you want from us?" The alien warlord laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. "I want your obedience, human. I want your fear. I want you to learn that the Vorthic are your masters. Now, we won't fight you," Jake said. "But we won't be your slaves either. Please just leave us alone." The alien's voice turned even colder. "You misunderstand, human. You have no choice in this matter. But since you are too proud to surrender, I will show you what happens to those who defy the Vorthic." The communication went silent. Jake tried to call back, but the aliens wouldn't answer. He looked at Gary, who was monitoring the alien ships. The technician's face was pale with fear. "What are they doing?" Jake asked. Gary checked his instruments. "They're sending small ships toward the surface. Lots of them." Jake felt his heart sink. He knew what was coming, but he couldn't believe it was really happening. After 15 years of peace, war had come to New Haven. The alien landing ships descended like falling stars. They were heading straight for the school. The alien soldiers moved through New Haven School like a dark storm. They were tall reptilian creatures with scales that looked like black armor. Their eyes glowed red in their snake-like faces. Each one carried weapons that hummed with deadly. Energy. Linda Morrison stood in front of her classroom, trying to protect her students. The alien soldiers pushed her aside without even looking at her. They began grabbing children and putting them in metal cages that floated in the air. Ben Patterson held his sister Amy tight as one of the creatures reached for them. The alien's claws were sharp enough to cut through metal. Amy started to cry, but Ben whispered in her ear that everything would be okay. He was lying, but he wanted to be brave for his little sister. The aliens took Carlos Rodriguez while his friend Ben watched in horror. They took Emma Sullivan while her mother, Dr. Kate, screamed from outside the school. They took child after child, loading them into the floating cages like they were animals. Tony Rodriguez ran toward the school when he heard the sirens. He saw his son Carlos being carried away by the aliens and tried to fight them. The reptilian soldier hit Tony with its weapon, sending him flying across the street. Tony got up and tried again, but more soldiers surrounded him. All across the colony, parents watched their children being taken. The aliens were fast and organized. They knew exactly what they were doing. They had done this before, on other worlds, to other families. Jake Morrison tried to reach the school, but alien soldiers blocked his path. He shouted into his radio, begging Warlord Zektar to stop, but the alien leader just laughed. The sound echoed across the colony through every speaker. In less than an hour, it was over. The aliens had taken 200 children from New Haven. They loaded the floating cages into their ships and returned to the sky. The children's crying voices faded as the alien ships rose higher and higher. Warlord Zektar spoke to the colony one last time. You have 72 hours to surrender completely. If you do not, these young humans will be sold as slaves to the highest bidder. Choose wisely. The alien ships moved away from New Haven, but stayed in the system. They hung in space like a threat, waiting for the humans to give up hope. Jake Morrison sat in his office with his head in his hands. His wife Linda was at the hospital, being treated for injuries from trying to protect her students. All around the colony, parents were crying for their lost children. The peaceful life they had built was shattered, but Jake had one more duty to perform. He activated the quantum communication system and sent an emergency message to Earth. The message was simple: New Haven colony under attack. 200 children taken hostage. Request immediate assistance. The message traveled faster than light through the quantum network. It reached Earth in minutes, and within an hour, every human world knew what had happened. On Earth, President Helen Carter was in a meeting about trade agreements when her aide rushed into the room. The aide whispered in her ear, and the president's face went white. She stood up immediately and canceled all her appointments. Get me the World Council, she said. Emergency session, now. The video from New Haven played on screens across Earth. Security cameras had recorded everything. The world watched as alien soldiers dragged human children from their classrooms. They saw parents trying to save their kids and being beaten down by the creatures. The reaction was immediate and angry. On the streets of New York, people gathered around public screens, shouting demands for action. In London, protesters marched to Parliament demanding war. In Tokyo, Beijing, and Moscow, the same scene played out. Humanity was furious. Admiral Frank Hayes commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from his headquarters on Luna Station. He was a tough old soldier who had fought in the colonial wars 20 years ago. He had seen battle and death, but the videos from New Haven made him shake with rage. How many ships can we get ready? He asked his staff. Captain Steve Murphy, commander of the battleship Use Vengeance, spoke up. Every ship in the fleet is ready to launch, sir. The crews are already on board. Good, Admiral Hayes said. Send the order. All ships to New Haven. Maximum speed. But the military wasn't the only group preparing to respond. Across human space, civilian ships were changing course too. Danny Clark was hauling cargo between Earth and Mars when he heard the news. He immediately turned his freighter toward New Haven. I got kids too, he told his crew. We're going to help bring them home. In the asteroid belt, mining ship Captain Sam Turner was drilling for rare metals when the news reached him. He looked at his industrial cutting lasers and had an idea. These tools could cut through solid rock. They could probably cut through alien ships too. Load up everything we got, he told his miners. We're going to war. The same scene played out all across human space. Freighter captains, mining crews, even luxury cruise ships started heading for New Haven. Nobody ordered them to go. They went because they were human, and humans protect their children. Dr. Alan Foster worked at the Xenobiology Institute on Earth. He studied alien species and knew more about them than almost anyone. When he heard about the Vorthik attack, He immediately started researching everything he could find about the reptilian race. "I need all the data we have on Vorthic physiology," he told his assistant. "And get me Lucy Chun from the tech division. We're going to find these creatures' weaknesses." Lucy Chun was Earth's computer expert. She could hack into any system and break any code. When Dr. Foster called her, she was already working on the problem. "I'm analyzing the alien communications," she said. "Their ships use a different kind of shield technology, but every shield has a weakness. I'll find it." The news spread beyond Earth, too. On the colony world of Aurora, Marine Colonel Rick Stone was training new recruits when he heard about New Haven. He immediately volunteered his entire unit for the rescue mission. "These aliens made a big mistake," he told his Marines. "They hurt our kids. Now they're going to learn what happens when you mess with humanity." On the trading station Deep Space Nine, cargo ship Captain Maria Santos was negotiating deals when the news came through. She was known for staying neutral in conflicts, but this was different. This was about children. "Cancel all my contracts," she told her crew. "We're going to New Haven." The message kept spreading. Every human world, every space station, every ship in the void heard about what had happened. The response was always the same: anger, determination, and a desperate need to help. Back on New Haven, the parents of the stolen children gathered in the colony's main hall. They wanted answers. They wanted their children back. They wanted someone to tell them that everything would be okay. Jake Morrison stood before them, still wearing the bandages from his fight with the alien soldiers. He looked at these people who had trusted him to keep their families safe. He had failed them, but he wasn't going to give up. "I know you're scared," he said. "I know you're angry. I am too. But I want you to know that help is coming. Earth is sending ships. Every human world is sending ships. We're not alone in this." Tony Rodriguez stood up in the crowd. His face was bruised from fighting the aliens, but his eyes were filled with determination. "What about the deadline?" "They said 72 hours. "We won't surrender," Jake said. "We won't let them sell our children as slaves. We'll fight if we have to." Dr. Kate Sullivan raised her hand. "How can we fight them? They have weapons we've never seen before." "I don't know," Jake admitted. "But I know this. Humanity doesn't abandon its children. When our kids are in danger, we do whatever it takes to save them, no matter the cost." The parents nodded. They were afraid, but they were also angry. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had threatened human children, and now they were going to face the consequences. Across the galaxy, the message continued to spread. Every species that knew humans heard about the attack on New Haven. Some were sympathetic. Others were curious to see what would happen next. The Vorthic had built their empire by attacking weak species. They were bullies who preyed on peaceful worlds, but they had never attacked humanity before. They didn't understand what they had just unleashed. In the depths of space, ship after ship turned toward New Haven. Military vessels, cargo haulers, mining ships, even personal yachts. They came from every corner of human space, united by a single purpose: bring the children home. The aliens thought they were dealing with a soft, emotional species. They were about to learn that there is nothing more dangerous than a human protecting their young. The first human ships arrived at New Haven just 36 hours after the attack. Admiral Frank Hayes brought the Earth Defense Fleet out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. The sight that greeted him was unlike anything he had ever seen. The Vorthic fleet hung in space like a dark cloud. Their ships were huge and menacing, covered in spikes and weapons. But Hayes had faced dangerous enemies before. What surprised him was what came next. More human ships kept arriving. Not just military vessels, but civilian ships of every kind. Cargo freighters, mining ships, passenger liners, even small personal craft. They came from every direction, emerging. From hyperspace in groups of dozens. Captain Steve Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance and watched the fleet grow. "I've never seen anything like this," he told his crew. "Look at them all. The civilian ships weren't supposed to be there. They had no business in a military operation. But nobody tried to send them away. Every captain, every crew member had come for the same reason, to bring the children home." Danny Clark's cargo freighter looked tiny next to the military battleships, but he took his place in the formation anyway. His ship was loaded with supplies and volunteers. Every human colony had sent people to help. "This is freighter Golden Eagle requesting orders." Danny radioed to the flagship. Admiral Hayes heard the transmission and smiled grimly. "Welcome to the fleet, Golden Eagle. Stay close and follow our lead." Sam Turner brought his mining ship Rockbreaker into formation near the military vessels. His crew had spent the journey modifying their industrial equipment. The ship's cutting lasers were now powerful enough to slice through alien armor. "Mining ship Rockbreaker ready for action," Sam reported. The fleet kept growing. By the second day, there were over 3,000 human ships in the system. It was the largest gathering of human vessels in history. Ships that had never worked together now moved in perfect coordination. Commander Lisa Parker led the fighter squadrons. She had pilots from a dozen different worlds, flying ships of every design. Some were military fighters, others were racing ships or cargo runners modified for combat. "All fighter wings. This is Phoenix Leader," she radioed. "Remember, we're not here to win a war. We're here to save kids. Every shot you take, every risk you take, think about those children." The pilots responded with determination. They all knew what was at stake. On the surface of New Haven, the colonists watched the growing fleet with hope and fear. Jake Morrison stood in his office, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, human ships were preparing to fight for his peoples. Children. His wife Linda was still in the hospital, but she was recovering. The injuries from the alien attack were healing, but the emotional wounds would take longer. Like every parent on New Haven, she couldn't sleep knowing her students were prisoners. Tony Rodriguez had organized the colonists into work teams. They were building shelters and preparing for battle. If the aliens attacked the surface again, the humans would be ready. "My boy Carlos is up there," Tony said to anyone who would listen. "He's only 9 years old. He must be so scared." Dr. Kate Sullivan worked at the hospital, treating the injured colonists. Her daughter Emma was also a prisoner on the alien ships. Kate tried to stay busy, but her hands shook every time she thought about what Emma might be going through. "We have to trust the fleet," she told herself. "They'll get our children back." Aboard the alien ships, the human children were being held in dark metal rooms. The aliens had given them food and water, but nothing else. The children were scared and confused, but they tried to stay brave. Ben Patterson had become a leader among the prisoners. At 8 years old, he was one of the older children. He helped the younger ones and tried to keep everyone calm. "My dad always said that humans take care of each other," he told the other children. "Someone will come for us. We just have to wait." His sister Amy drew pictures on the metal walls with a piece of charcoal she had found. She drew their house, their parents, and the purple flowers from their garden. The pictures helped the other children remember home. Carlos Rodriguez missed his father terribly. He was Ben's best friend, and they stuck together in the alien prison. Carlos told stories about his father's work fixing machines, making the other children laugh despite their fear. Emma Sullivan was 6 years old and very scared. She kept asking for her mother, Dr. Kate. The older children took turns comforting her, just like Dr. Kate would have done. The Vorthic guards watched the children with confusion. They had captured young members of many species before, but human. Children were different. Instead of breaking down completely, they seemed to grow stronger when they worked together. Warlord Z-Tar studied the growing human fleet from his command ship. His advisors were nervous about the number of ships arriving, but Zektar was confident. He had destroyed many species before. These emotional humans would be no different. "Look at them," he said to his officers. "They bring cargo ships and mining vessels to fight our war fleet. They are desperate and foolish." But his chief advisor, a scarred old Vorthik named Grix, was worried. "The human fleet is larger than expected, my lord. Perhaps we should negotiate." Zektar's eyes glowed red with anger. "We do not negotiate with prey animals. We will destroy their pathetic fleet and take their entire world. Then they will learn to fear the Vorthik." The human fleet continued to organize itself. Admiral Hayes divided the ships into battle groups. The military vessels formed the core of the fleet, while the civilian ships were assigned support roles. But many of the civilian captains had other ideas. Paul Baker commanded a luxury cruise ship that normally carried rich passengers between Earth and the colonies. He had converted his ship into a mobile command center. "We're not staying in the back," he told his crew. "Those children need everyone to fight for them." The deadline was approaching. In just a few hours, the Vorthik would either receive the colony's surrender, or they would start selling the children as slaves. But the humans had no intention of surrendering. Dr. Alan Foster worked with his team to analyze the alien ships. They had found weaknesses in the Vorthik shields and weapons. The information was being shared with every ship in the fleet. "Their shields operate on a rotating frequency," he explained to Admiral Hayes. "If we can hit them with the right energy pulse, we can bring them down." Lucy Chun had been working day and night to develop countermeasures. She had created a computer virus that could disrupt alien systems. The virus was loaded into the fleet's weapons systems. "When we attack, this virus will spread to every alien ship we hit," she said. "It will cause their computers to malfunction." The preparations were nearly complete. Every ship was armed and ready. Every crew member knew their job. The largest human fleet in history was about to go into battle. But this wasn't a normal battle. This was personal. Every human in the fleet was fighting for something more important than territory or resources. They were fighting for children. They were fighting for the future of their species. Colonel Rick Stone and his Marines were aboard the assault ships, ready to board the alien vessels. Their mission was clear: find the children and bring them home alive. "Remember," he told his troops, "we're not just soldiers today. We're parents, brothers, sisters, and friends. Those kids up there are depending on us." The Marines nodded. They understood. This was the most important mission of their lives. As the deadline approached, Admiral Hayes sent one final message to the Vorthik fleet. It was broadcast on all frequencies, translated into every known language. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Fleet. You have taken our children. You have threatened our people. You have made a terrible mistake. Release the children now, and we will let you leave this system alive. Continue to hold them, and we will show you why humanity has survived every threat we have ever faced." The message was clear and direct. The humans were giving the aliens one last chance to avoid a war. Warlord Zeet-Tar received the message and laughed. He had heard similar threats from other species before they were conquered. He activated his own communication system and sent a reply. "Human Admiral, you amuse me. Your pathetic fleet cannot challenge the might of the Vorthik Empire. In 1 hour, the deadline will pass. When it does, I will begin selling your young as slaves. Then I will destroy your fleet and take your world. You should have surrendered when you had the chance." The alien warlord cut the transmission. He had made his choice. Now the humans would make theirs. Admiral Hayes looked at the time display on his command bridge. 58 minutes until the deadline. He turned to his communications officer. "Send the signal to all ships," he ordered. "Prepare for battle." Across the massive human fleet, the same message was received. On military ships and civilian vessels, crews prepared for the fight of their lives. They checked their weapons, said their prayers, and thought about the children they had come to save. The storm was about to break. And when it did, the galaxy would learn what happened when someone threatened human children. The deadline passed in silence. For 1 minute, both fleets hung in space without moving. Then Admiral Hayes spoke the words that would echo through history. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes. Our children are waiting for us. Bring them home." The human fleet moved forward as one. 3,000 ships of every size and shape advanced toward the Vorthik fleet. The sight was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Captain Steve Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance and watched the alien ships grow larger on his screen. "All weapons charged and ready," his weapons officer reported. "Target the ship holding the children," Murphy ordered. "We go in fast and hard." The Vorthik fleet responded to the human advance. Their ships were larger and more heavily armed than most human vessels. Warlord Zektar was confident that his superior firepower would crush the human fleet quickly. "Attack!" he roared to his ship commanders. "Show these humans what happens when they challenge the Vorthik." The alien ships opened fire first. Green energy beams lanced out across space, striking the approaching human fleet. But something unexpected happened. The human shields held. Dr. Alan Foster's research had paid off. The human ships had been modified with new shield technology that could absorb the alien energy weapons. The attacks that should have destroyed human ships barely dented their defenses. "Impossible," Zektar snarled. "How are they blocking our weapons?" The human fleet reached firing range and returned fire. The difference was immediately clear. Wow! The aliens had been confident in their superior technology. The humans had been preparing for this exact moment. The UES Vengeance fired its main guns at a Vorthik cruiser. The alien ship's shields flared and failed under the coordinated attack. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire and debris. "Direct hit," Murphy's weapons officer shouted. "Their shields are down." All across the battlefield, the same scene played out. The human fleet had found the frequency that could penetrate Vorthik shields. Ship after ship of the alien fleet was being destroyed, but the humans fought with more than just superior technology. They fought with the fury of parents whose children had been taken. Every shot was fired with perfect precision. Every maneuver was calculated to bring them closer to the ships holding the prisoners. Danny Clark's cargo freighter wasn't built for combat, but he threw his ship into the battle anyway. When an alien fighter tried to attack the UES Vengeance, Danny rammed his freighter into it. Both ships exploded, but Danny's sacrifice saved the battleship. "Danny!" Admiral Hayes shouted over the radio, but it was too late. Another good man had died for the children. Sam Turner's mining ship Rockbreaker proved surprisingly effective in battle. His industrial cutting lasers sliced through alien hulls like they were made of paper. His crew worked their equipment with the skill of experienced miners. But now they were mining alien ships instead of asteroids. "Cut them apart," Sam shouted to his crew. "Every ship we destroy is one less threat to our kids." The civilian ships fought with desperate courage. They had no military training, but they had something more important. They were fighting for their children. Paul Baker's luxury cruise ship rammed through a formation of alien fighters. Maria Santos used her cargo hauler to shield damaged human ships from enemy fire. Commander Lisa Parker led her fighter squadrons in a deadly dance around the alien fleet. Her pilots came from different worlds and flew different ships, but they worked together perfectly. Phoenix Squadron, target the alien ship at coordinates 779, she ordered. That's where the children are. The fighters swarmed the alien prison ship. They had to be careful not to damage the hull where the children were being held. It was difficult and dangerous work, but the pilots were the best humanity had to offer. The Vorthic fleet began to fall apart under the human assault. Their ships were being destroyed faster than they could respond. The aliens had expected to fight a desperate, disorganized enemy. Instead, they faced a perfectly coordinated fleet that fought with inhuman precision. "My lord," Advisor Grix said to Warlord Zektar, "we are losing. We should retreat while we still can." But Zektar's pride wouldn't let him admit defeat. Never. "We will fight to the last ship." The alien warlord was about to learn that pride was a luxury he couldn't afford when fighting humans protecting their children. Colonel Rick Stone and his Marines were aboard the assault ships, waiting for their chance to board the alien vessels. Their mission was the most important of all: rescue the children. "Remember," Stone told his troops, "the kids are scared and confused. When you find them, the first thing you do is tell them they're safe. Then you get them out of there." The Marines nodded. Many of them had children of their own. They understood what was at stake, that the assault ships moved through the battle, protected by the main fleet. They reached the alien prison ship and began cutting through the hull. The Marines poured through the breach, their weapons ready. The Vorthic guards inside the ship tried to resist, but they were no match for human Marines fighting to save children. The aliens had never faced enemies who fought with such determination. Stone led his team through the dark corridors of the alien ship. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and the air smelled of chemicals. But they could hear something that made their hearts race: the sound of human children crying. "This way!" Stone shouted. "They're close." The Marines blasted through door after door until they found the prison area. There, in dark metal rooms, were the children of New Haven, 200 scared, brave little human beings who had been waiting for rescue. Ben Patterson was the first to see the Marines. His eyes went wide with hope. "Are you here to take us home?" he asked. "That's exactly why we're here, son," Stone replied. "You're safe now." The Marines quickly freed the children from their cages. Amy Patterson ran to her brother Ben, and they hugged each other tight. Carlos Rodriguez asked about his father Tony. Emma Sullivan wanted to know if her mother, Dr. Kate, was okay. "Everyone you love is waiting for you," Stone promised them. "Now let's get you out of here." But the rescue wasn't over yet. The Marines had to get the children to the assault ships and then back to safety. The alien ship was still in the middle of a battle zone, as the Marines led the children through the corridors. They could hear the battle raging outside. Human ships were still fighting to destroy the rest of the Vorthic fleet. Every explosion meant another alien ship defeated. The children were scared by the noise, but they trusted the Marines. Ben Patterson helped carry a younger child who was too frightened to walk. Amy Patterson held the hand of a little boy who was crying for his parents. "We're going to be okay," Ben told the other children. "These soldiers came to save us." The Marines loaded the children into the assault ships. As soon as they were secure, the ships began the journey back to New Haven. The children pressed their faces against the windows. Watching the battle outside, they saw human ships fighting with incredible skill and determination. They saw alien ships exploding in brilliant flashes of light. They saw the largest fleet in human history fighting just for them. Admiral Hayes received the message he had been waiting for: children secured, all prisoners safe. The Admiral felt a wave of relief wash over him. The mission was almost complete, but there was still work to do. "All ships, this is Admiral Hayes," he broadcast. "The children are safe. Now let's finish this." The human fleet pressed their attack with renewed fury. The Vorthic fleet was already broken, but the humans wanted to make sure no alien ship escaped. They wanted to send a message that would be heard across the galaxy. Warlord Ziktar watched his empire crumble around him. Ship after ship of his fleet was destroyed. His advisors begged him to surrender, but his pride still wouldn't let him admit defeat. "We still have the colony," he said desperately. "We can destroy their world," but it was too late. The human fleet had surrounded the remaining alien ships. There was no escape. Captain Murphy's U's Vengeance moved in for the final attack on Zektar. Command ship. The alien warlord had made the mistake of threatening human children. Now he would pay the price. "This is for the kids," Murphy said as he fired his main guns. The alien command ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Warlord Zektar died without ever understanding the terrible mistake he had made. The battle was over. The Vorthic fleet was destroyed. Only a few alien ships managed to escape, and they fled the system as fast as they could. The human fleet had won a complete victory, but the real victory was simpler and more important. In the assault ships flying back to New Haven, 200 human children were safe. They were going home to their families. The children looked out at the stars and saw the human fleet surrounding them like a protective shield. They had learned something important. When human children are in danger, all of humanity comes to help. The galaxy would learn the same lesson. The few surviving Vorthic ships would carry the story of what happened at New Haven. They would tell other species about the day they made the mistake of threatening human children. The human fleet began to disperse, but not before making sure the children were truly safe. The assault ships landed at New Haven Spaceport, and the children ran into the arms of their waiting parents. Tony Rodriguez saw his son Carlos and fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He had thought he might never see his boy again. Carlos ran to his father, and the celebration on New Haven lasted for 3 days. Families that had been torn apart were together again. Children who had been prisoners were free. The colony that had been threatened was safe, but Admiral Hayes knew the job wasn't finished. The few Vorthic ships that had escaped the battle were still out there. They would return to their home system and tell their leaders what had happened. More importantly, they might try to attack other human colonies. "We're not done yet," Hayes told his fleet commanders. "We need to make sure this never happens again." The human fleet followed the fleeing alien ships through hyperspace. The trail led to the Vorthic home system, where a huge alien empire had been built on the suffering of conquered species. When the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found themselves facing something they had never seen before. The Vorthic capital system was filled with ships from dozens of different species. All of them were slaves to the reptilian empire. "My God," Captain Murphy whispered as he looked at the alien fleet. "Look at all those ships." The Vorthic had been conquering other species for hundreds of years. Their empire was built on fear and violence. They had enslaved entire worlds and forced other species to fight for them. But now they faced something they had never encountered before, a species that fought back with unbreakable determination. Admiral Hayes broadcast a message to the entire Vorthic system. His words were translated into every known language so that all the enslaved species could understand. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Fleet. We have come here because the Vorthic made a terrible mistake. They threatened our children. They thought we would surrender rather than fight. They were wrong." The message continued as the human fleet moved deeper into the system. "We are not conquerors. We do not seek to rule over other species. But we will not allow anyone to threaten our families. Today, the Vorthic Empire learns what happens when you cross humanity." The alien fleet tried to organize a defense, but it was too late. The human ships had spent the journey from New Haven planning their attack. They knew exactly what they were: Going to do the battle for the Vorthig home system was different from the fight at New Haven. This time, the humans weren't just trying to rescue their children. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. The enslaved species watched in amazement as the human fleet tore through the Vorthig defenses. Ships that had terrorized other worlds for centuries were destroyed in minutes. The empire that had seemed invincible was falling apart. Some of the enslaved species began to rebel against their Vorthig masters. They had been waiting for someone to stand up to the reptilian empire. Now they had their chance. Colonel Stone and his Marines boarded the alien command stations and freed thousands of prisoners from dozens of different species. The liberated aliens looked at the human soldiers with wonder and gratitude. "You came all this way just to save your children?" asked one freed prisoner, a blue-skinned alien from the Altair system. "We came to save our children," Stone replied. "But we're not leaving anyone behind." The battle was over quickly. The Vorthig fleet was destroyed, and their empire collapsed. The species they had enslaved were free. The threat to human colonies was eliminated, but the most important part of the mission was still to come. Admiral Hayes prepared to send a message that would be heard across the galaxy. He wanted every species to understand what had happened and why. "Attention, all civilizations," Hayes began. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Fleet. Today you have witnessed the fall of the Vorthig Empire. This happened because they made a simple mistake. They threatened our children." The message was broadcast on every frequency and transmitted to every known world. It would be remembered as one of the most important communications in galactic history. "Let this be a warning to every species in the galaxy," Hayes continued. "Humanity seeks peace with all civilizations. We want to trade, to learn, and to grow together among the stars. But we will not tolerate threats to our families." The Admiral paused, looking out at the wreckage of the Vorthig fleet. "We did not come here as conquerors. We came as parents. We came as protectors. And we came as humans who will never abandon our children." The message reached every corner of the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, different species heard the same words. The reputation of humanity changed forever in that moment. The Zephyrians, who had been neutral in most conflicts, immediately offered to establish trade relations with humanity. The Crystalline Collective, who had feared the Vorthig for generations, sent messages of gratitude. Even the proud warrior clans of Rigel acknowledged humanity's strength and honor. But the most important audience for the message was back on New Haven. The colonists gathered in the main square to hear Admiral Hayes speak. The children who had been rescued sat with their parents, safe and happy. Ben Patterson held his sister Amy's hand as they listened to the Admiral. They had been at the center of the greatest battle in human history, and they were still just children. But they had learned something important about what it means to be human. "We protect each other," Ben said to Amy. "That's what makes us human." Amy nodded and squeezed her brother's hand. She had been scared during her time as a prisoner, but she had never stopped believing that someone would come for her. Now she knew why. Because she was human, and humans never abandon their children. The human fleet began to disperse, returning to their home worlds and normal duties. But the galaxy was different now. The story of the Battle of New Haven spread to every star system. Other species spoke of humanity with new respect and caution. The Vorthig Empire was gone forever. The species they had enslaved were free to rebuild their civilizations. And every potential threat to humanity knew that there were certain lines that should never be crossed. Jake Morrison stood in his office, looking out at the colony his people had built. New Haven was peaceful again. Children played in the streets. Families worked together to build a better future. The purple flowers still grew wild in the fields. His wife Linda had returned to the education center. The children were happy to see her again. They had stories to tell about their adventure, but they were also eager to get back to normal life. "What did you learn while you were gone?" Linda asked her class. Ben Patterson raised his hand. "We learned that humans take care of each other. No matter how far apart we are, no matter how different we are, we're still family." Carlos Rodriguez nodded. "My dad always said that humans protect their children. Now I know he was right." Emma Sullivan drew a picture of the human fleet surrounding the alien ships. "They came from everywhere just to save us," she said. "That's what families do." The children of New Haven went back to their normal lives, but they were different now. They had seen the power of human unity. They had learned what it means to be part of something bigger than themselves. Across the galaxy, other species were learning the same lesson. The humans were not just another spacefaring civilization. They were something special. They were a species that would move heaven and earth to protect their children. The message was clear and simple. Humanity would go to any length, pay any price, and cross any distance to keep their families safe. They were not conquerors or tyrants. They were parents and protectors, and anyone who threatened their children would face the full wrath of every human in the galaxy. The stars themselves seemed to whisper the lesson as it spread from world to world. Don't mess with humanity's young. The price is more than any species can afford to pay. Years later, when alien children heard bedtime stories about the great powers of the galaxy, they would learn about the humans. They would hear about the species that loved their children so much that they would fight the entire universe to keep them safe. And in those stories, the lesson would always be the same. There is no force in the universe more dangerous than humans protecting their families. The Vorthik learned this lesson too late, but their defeat became a warning that echoed through the stars for generations to come. The children of New Haven grew up to become leaders, scientists, artists, and explorers. They carried with them the knowledge that they were part of something greater than themselves. They were human, and that meant they were never truly alone. Ben Patterson became a diplomat, working to build peace between species. Amy Patterson became a teacher, just like Linda Morrison. Carlos Rodriguez became an engineer, building the machines that would take humanity to new stars. All of them remembered the day they learned what it truly meant to be human. And they passed that knowledge on to their own children, who would pass it on to theirs. The galaxy was safer because of what happened at New Haven, and humanity took its place among the stars not as conquerors, but as protectors. They had proven that love and determination could overcome any threat. The message rang clear across the cosmos. Humanity had arrived, and they had come to stay. And anyone who threatened their children would learn why that was the most dangerous mistake they could ever make.